This is Shaniqua, and yes, it is. That's why we got the wine. We're talking about some heavy stuff today.
Yes, we had to add the libation. So, if you remember from episode 1, we were talking about some things that we have in common, right? And one of the biggest things I think that's important that draws us together is parenthood, because we're all mothers. So we thought this episode we would bring it back, the topic, circle around it, and talk about parenting. Like, how did we learn to parent? What things did we take from our parents, and what things were we like, nah, that's not how I want to do this thing. So I guess the first question I'll ask is, for your parent, what kind of parenting style did you all grow up with, and was it impactful to who you are now?
Very deep question.
Do you see?
um, I grew up in a. My mother wasn't really there, you know. I think I touched on this in episode 1. We didn't really get too much in detail, but I think that she was living her life, and to the point that we were on the back burner, right? And so I think my younger years, I was chasing after her, right? And so she just didn't have it to give. I guess I get that now. You know, I'm writing a book, Memoir of a Burdened Child. Be out this year.
Go on and mark it.
It'll be out this year. But it talks about that, pretty much me chasing her. And I came to realize, like, okay, you know what? This is not it. My father was the same way. So I pretty much grew up, you know, without no guidance, without them to really lead me, because we were in surviving. Like, surviving. What are we going to eat today? Where are we going to stay today? You know, things like that. So that's kind of how I grew up. And the style that, you know, they gave.
So no style,
No style,
just freestyling it now.
Just freestyle.
I get it. I get it. No, I can. That really resonates with me. I think for me, similar. And I've talked to my mom about this. Like, I didn't really grow up with my mom, and I think at first that was one of those things where I thought about it like, oh, you know, she just didn't want to be bothered, stuff like that. But as a parent myself, like, we go through so much mentally, right? It's just can be so much, and I think, you know, you have people who kind of just push through and do what they need to do with their kids, and the other ones just like, I can't do it. And I do feel like that's kind of the road my mom went. Like, I just can't do it. So I didn't have my mom growing up. I was really in and out of my life. Again, like I said before, I'm like mama's baby, daddy's maybe. So I didn't really have my dad or his like family around because they didn't know. And you know, as I got older, like it's like it is what it is. So like I kind of always looked at it like I kind of grew up with like, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. So like, let's give her bare necessities. Let's feed her and keep her clothed and some shelter. And like, so that's kind of how I thought parenting was. Just like, you just feed them, clothe them, make sure they're still breathing. Like, there was no other stuff a part of that. So like, I think parenting style for me was just like keep the person alive and see what happens. Everything else is like bonus points. So I didn't really grow up with a parenting style to kind of like figure out how I should parent, because like I just always felt like I was just put out there. I was born and like here we are. So there was like none of that other stuff. So same here, no parenting style for me. So
It's freestyles all across the board. Okay, so
right.
well, I did great. No, I'm just joking. No, so my mom was with my dad for however long. They split though when I was like young, but then my stepdad came in, and so then that's how we moved to the U.S. But my mom was a single mom for a while, and then with, you know, when my stepdad came in, my biological dad became like, oh, and let me disclaim this, I love both of my parents very much, so anything I say is not an attack on them. But so my dad became like a summertime dad, so I didn't have a super close relationship with him until I became an adult and had my own child. But my mom was, you know, the everything, right? Disciplinarian, the cook. You know, she had to do it on her own. And then when my stepdad came in, he helped relieve those tasks for her. And what's funny is, like, when I talk to my siblings about our childhood, everybody has a different perspective. Like, I'm like, were we raised in the same household? Because yeah. Exactly. And I was like, I think my mom did a dope job. But then, like, you talk to whatever, one of my siblings, and they have a different perspective. So for me, there were some gems that I picked up from her, but also some things I was like, I kind of want to do that different. And one of the main things, which can take us into another discussion, is saying like I love you.
Yeah.
And my grandmother, so her mom, so on that side, her mom is Native American, and so they're very like culturally stoic, right? Like culturally they don't say that, but also on the Caribbean side, I didn't get it from my dad either. So when I tell you, me and my son say I love you about 3, 4, 5, anytime we hang up, like it's just I love you, like, and he's known that from birth. And so I notice when he says it to my dad or my brother, one of my brothers, it's like awkward for them.
Yeah.
But he'll still say it. He's just like, all right, uncle, love you. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's normal for him because that's how I, brought him up. So that's one of the things that I do different from my parents is like inserting that. So there's more, but I'll let you guys.
Yeah. No, I can totally get that, especially with the I love you. And I will say this, like, even with having the absence of, like, a biological mother and father, I will say, like, the family that did step up. Because you brought up, like, your stepfather. Like, I did have an amazing stepdad before he passed away. I did have, like, my grandma. And I think when I think about parents, I know that I think about it, like, even when I do trips and stuff for my kids, a lot of that comes from my aunt. Like, my aunt was married, like, she had her kids, and, like, the way she raised her kids was like, oh, that's how a family is supposed to be, and then, like, me growing up and, like, her making us a part of it, it's always felt like, oh, this is what I want, right? Like, if I want the husband, the kids, the trips, like, oh, people plan trips, people go places, what? So it's, like, things like that. So that's where I, like, kind of get where, like, my parenting idea comes from. But when you brought up the love thing, it's funny because I'm the same way with my kids. Like, I'm always like, I love you, I love you, I love you beautiful, I love you handsome, like, just letting them know, like, how amazing they are, but also that love. And, like, my mom, when she came to Texas when I first moved out here, she was like, your kids say I love you, like, all the time, like, even to her. And it was like, but it's also like how she was raised. Like, she wasn't used to, like, her mom saying I love you. Yeah. So, like, it's like, they pass that down. And it's just like, where did we pick that up then from? Like, that's what we're used to seeing. Like, where did we get to the fact, like, okay, we're going to tell our kids, like, we love them. So
I agree on that. And I think for me, it was the first time my mom said I love you. And I was like, ooh, that felt weird. And I would never forget that feeling. Like, I said I love you too, but it just felt foreign. It didn't feel like, okay. So when I had my son, it was like I overly poured into him. I kissed him. I made sure I was very affectionate with him. I told him I love him. And he's the same way. And sometimes it'd be 3,782 times a day that he would tell it to me. But it's just like he's used to it. That's how it is for him. And the same with my daughter. She said the same every time I leave out the door, like, drive safe, be safe, love you. Every time we hang up, it's always I love you. And it's because that's what's natural for them. It's natural for me to hug on them. It's natural for to kiss on them. It's not nothing that it's foreign to them, because I remember how it felt the first time she ever said it to me. Yeah. And so I knew I did not want my kids to feel that. They need to know that I love them, not just verbally, but also hugging them. Because, like, even that, like, okay, you never hugged me before. Yeah. That's a little awkward,
But it goes back to, too, because I think you said it, I don't know if it was episode 2 or episode 1, but, like, you can't, like, do what you don't know, because I literally had the conversation with each of my parents and told them that. And now my mom, every time we hang up, it's like, I love you. And it doesn't feel foreign anymore, right? Because I told him, I'm like, do you know you don't say it? And she didn't even realize it. And then my dad, again, like, with his culture. So now he's still, like, getting used to it, but he'd be like, all right, love you, bye. Like, it's like a quick, like,
gotta get it out.
Yeah. So, and I even talked to him about, right. And so I even talked to him about, like, how I felt about him being, like, a summertime dad and a weekend dad. And I was like, and I need you to have that relationship with my son, like your grandson. And so he has stepped up more. But it's still, like, when you tell them, it's almost like you expected them to know that. And that's what I tell my siblings or even my clients for therapy. Like, do they know that they didn't parent you how you wanted to be parented? Or do they know that they impacted you in this way? So it's also giving them grace, right, for not doing what they didn't have the knowledge to do. And so I didn't really know my dad's side. I didn't. Yeah, at the time, I didn't know my dad's parents, but, like, my mom's, like, parents I grew up with. And so I could tell, like, where she got it from, just, again, that Native American culture. And, she had 8 siblings, so I could imagine what it was like to parent 8 children. you know. But yeah, so I think that was one of the important things, the I love yous. The other one was that I didn't want. So I had this stigma about, before I had kids, right? A stigma about single mothers, right? Especially being a black woman and being a single mother.
Okay, airplane.
Keep going. Okay. So being a single mother and being black, so that was always something I'm like, okay, I'm never going to be that. Like, and I judge those women, right? Or women that had multiple baby daddies, baby fathers. And so when I became, and I hate to use that word because I'm not a single mother. I have such an amazing village. I've never ever felt like a single mother. But when that became what I identified as, I was super shameful of myself, and so then I stayed in a relationship longer than I had to make it work, so I didn't become that stereotype. And it was just the worst thing ever to be in that season and like be broken and trying to also prove to everyone that like I'm not this stereotype. So when we were growing up, she was in a shelter for a little bit with us, and then got out of it. But that was one of the things that I didn't want to be. So
I think for me, I can resonate with that too. Well, in some ways, I think that I didn't grow up with a lot of visuals of what marriage looked like or people being married. So I never had that. I guess I never had that hope for myself. And I think it's because, again, I was still stuck in survival mode. I grew up a different type of way. I grew up like, okay, I still remember what it's like to be hungry. And I'm not talking about, hey, we just skipped a meal. I'm talking about days, right? So my focus wasn't about, hey, I'm going to get with this man and we're going to get married and we're going to build a family. I didn't know what that is. And honestly, I might still struggle with that a little bit of what it's like to come in partnership with someone and to raise a family. So when I thought about children, I don't even know if I thought about children like as in, hey, I'm going to build a family. I know what to do to not have kids. Did I do it? No. I got pregnant at 20. And it was in a situation, in a relationship that wasn't feeding me. And so I knew for a fact that he won't have that. I didn't realize that I was also passing that down to my son. But the difference is I knew I was going to be there. I knew that he was going to have a house. He was going to have a room. He was going to have a bed. He was going to have food. He would never know what it's like to have to hustle, to eat at such a young age. He would never know what it's like to be evicted because he has a mother that's going to be there for him. And I get that's resonate with you. Like, hey, feed him, clothe him. But what I didn't realize in doing that, and I'm trying to heal my younger self through that I couldn't see him. And he was struggling through some things. My son had he was the typical hyper kid that went to school that people were like, okay, medicate him. I didn't have any guidance on that. I knew it didn't feel right, but everybody's telling me what to do. Like, oh, take him. Something's wrong with him. Something's wrong with him. Something wrong. He can't do this. He can't do that. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? So I internalized that. He's getting in trouble, but he's such a smart kid. Like, super smart kid. He was reading that too. He was doing all these amazing things, but his behavior wasn't conducive with his education. So something's wrong with him. And it's like, whoop him, do this, do that. And it didn't really feel right to me, but I was so lost that I was listening to everything, what everybody was saying, because my main goal was make sure this kid can eat, make sure he had his bed. And once I satisfied that, I'm like, why are you still acting out? Like, I'm doing everything. And it took me to go into therapy to say that you were trying to heal yourself, that you could not see what he was going through. And that was hard.
Therapy nuggets.
That was hard. It was realization to me. I had to take a step back like, she right. I'm not seeing my son struggle. Like, he's struggling in school. I never did that. So how do I help him with that? And everybody I called on, and when I'm glad y'all had a village, but I did not have a village when it came to him. I reached out to organizations. I reached out to so many people because I'm like, I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do. I'm like, I'm getting a call every single day from the school to the point when the number come up on my phone, I'm having a anxiety attack. That's how much they call me. Like, you need to come get this boy. And I don't know what to do. And I had no guidance. But I told him, like, I'll be there. That's all I could do. And I called Neek. Like, your godson is acting up again, you know?
Girl, you embody that. You don't look like what you've been through. I'm sitting
That
here like,
part.
what?
Right.
You went hungry for days. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. No, and it's crazy you all said that because like when you all kind of talk about like because even with the village thing, I will say making sure our kids have a safe space to talk about anything is so important because like that's like I had my oldest at 16, right? He's about to be 21. And I always say the reason I had him at 16 is because I didn't have a safe space. Like to be able to say, not like, you're not supposed to have sex as a teenager, but like if you know these things are happening, you go to someone and say, hey, I think I may want to be on birth control. The first reaction would be to beat you. And that was the first reaction. Like, oh, birth control, you want to talk about this? And for this person not to even be your parent, but is in charge of raising you and beating you because you're asking, what you going to do? I ain't going to bring it up no more. Ain't going to be able to stop having sex. I just know this is not a safe space because then the guy I'm messing with is a safe space. His house becomes a sanctuary because they don't have violence. They're accepting me. They're loving me. And so, with all that coming into play, then my son happens, right? And I think when we talk about like a village raising a child, it wasn't my village, it wasn't my family. Like I will always give my oldest son's dad like all the kudos because if it wasn't for him and his family, I probably wouldn't have graduated high school. I probably wouldn't have went to college. Like it's really important just to make sure your kids have a safe space. And I think that's the biggest thing that I changed from like how I was parenting versus how I parent now is like you can talk to me about anything. Like in the back of my mind, like yeah, my daughter talking about she got a boyfriend. I'm just like why, but I'm not gonna say why. I'm probably gonna text y'all like oh my gosh, like this
already?
girl, this muscle head little boy. But we'll talk about that another time. I'm just like put on put on the smile. Guess we're all going to the movies. And it's like, but that's the space
We're gonna
you
have some conversations tonight. Okay.
Oh Lord. But that's a space you want to create because you want to make sure that they have that safe connection where they know that. But then also I think that's why I go into so much to like beautiful, handsome, because you also want to make sure they know their worth. And I think that's the other part, not so much just also the safe space, but like I didn't know my worth. Like if no one's pouring into you to tell you like you're beautiful, you're smart, you're intelligent, like the first sign or first smell of that, you're gonna run to that. So like I always tell people it's crazy because like my son's father was actually my bully first, but like he showed me attention. I know it's so weird, right? But he showed me attention, and we were down the street from each other, so it's like I know. But that was the attention. That was more attention I was getting, right? So it led to something else. So it's like it's so important just to pour into your kids to let, even if you don't know what that feels like, even if it's uncomfortable for you, like you say, like go to therapy, figure out your own stuff, but like don't put that on your kids. And I think a lot of times, like I've talked to my mom, like no one told her that, like no one told her she was beautiful, no one told her this, that, and the third. She didn't hear that from my grandma, so of course she's gonna run to me. Like she had my sister at 14, so it's like how do you break those generational curses? And like even though John's about to be 21 and no kids, stuff like that, I don't think my anxiety, and y'all could probably talk more about this, doesn't come from the boy. It's come from like, I got a little girl, you know what I mean? I think that's where a lot of my anxiety, but we got to treat the boys and girls the same, right? Like we can't just like single out. But I think with John, I was like, I was never worried about that. Like I didn't think about it as much as I think about Dream. It's just like, I really want to lock you in the tower, but I can't do that. So here we are. So I'm just like, I'm working through those emotions as a parent, like, especially with the little girl, just like, okay, she's not me. I'm not my mom. We're going to like work through this so we won't have like repeated situations. So yes, I get it with like the tribes and everything, but I think the biggest thing that I'm learning is just like, I just want to protect on a different level, right? I want to be the one that protects my children in a healthy way. And when you're talking about like the beating and stuff like that, one thing that I think everybody probably would get annoyed with me about in the past was like, I don't whip my kids. I don't whip John. I never whipped John. Mm-hmm. Well, no, I take that back. I learned my mistakes from John, right? I learned, but I don't. Right. Yeah, I learned my mistakes from John, but Dream and EJ, no, I don't. Like we have conversations. Like Dream, you have to write a paper, or we do like other things, but like put my hand, I would never ever, just because of the abuse that I went through, I would never do that. Like that's not healthy. And like I think we're so programmed to think like beat them, beat them, beat them. That doesn't help anything.
It actually hurts it more than anything because I was
I'm
gonna. I thought you.
apologizing.
I know because I thought you was
I
about
was
to
gonna
go.
jump on it, but no,
I know.
go
I
ahead.
know. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No,
Because
go ahead.
it really did resonate with me because I remember even when I'm telling like a male cousin of mine like, hey, he's going through this, and he was like, beat him. I was like, no, he didn't say beat him. That sounds like Color Purple. He was like, did you whoop him? I was like, I did. It don't work. It don't work. And he was like, you didn't do it right. And when he said that, I was like,
Gotta get the steel belt with the spikes.
that's not the answer. That's not the answer. And I think it was more so it doesn't work. Now, my son and I went to therapy. I put him in therapy when he was 12, and we did it together, and we really learned how to work on our relationship.
That's awesome.
Because that was a learning, but with my daughter, she never got a whooping. Actually, you can just talk to her, and she just like, okay, so it was never that. And I think I learned so much in parenting him that I realized I didn't have to do that with her. But it is different, a boy versus a girl. I think for me, I look at the men in my family, and I'm like, my son got to be better. So I started parenting from fear that he would follow in that footstep because he didn't see better.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But with my daughter, I'm healing myself through parenting her. It's like, okay, the same thing. You're beautiful. You're worthy. Giving her space to feel how she feels. Like, she tells me everything. Yeah. How do we work through that? And I see little things that, okay, if I don't nip this in the bud now, then it will become a problem as an adult. Like, I'm telling her the power of no. Things were happening where this little boy on the bus kept wanting to see her phone, and she gave it to him, and she'd come home. Mom, he asked to see my phone again. I said, did you tell him no? No, but can you go talk to his mom? I said, no, I can't talk to his mom. Until you learn how to tell him no and stand up for yourself and earn and own that no, I'm not gonna intervene. And so it's like, she came home, I told him no, and I said, what do you say? He said, okay. I said, you see how powerful that is? Own your no.
Yeah. Just working. Okay, so that's not having, going back to our title, not minus the blueprint. So working in child welfare, right? So I see parents, because it's not a natural thing. You don't just become a parent and then you got it all figured out, right? So seeing the tons of cases, being with child welfare, working with parents that don't that abuse and neglect their children. And it's just, to me, I've just been so grateful because parents have so much power. Like, God gives us so much power. You're literally, like, molding a freaking human being. Yeah. Like, everything you do impacts them, the way you respond to them, the way you interact with them. You know what I'm saying? So seeing these parents that come, and it's generational, right? I see generational CPS cases. And so seeing these parents that come with their, trying to get their children back, fight for them. But then when we return them, they're still in the same state because nothing's changed, right? Because it's ingrained in them, or if they're just doing it to get their kid back because, they have to because courts are involved, right? But you're seeing that dynamic and parent kids, and I don't know if you guys are there, but kids that have been abused and neglected, any kid, like, they're going to always long for their parent no matter what they do. So is that something that you guys, just because you guys have different experiences than me, but do you feel as an adult now that you still long for that, even if it's like in the back of your mind?
Good question.
Got the 1-2 today.
I think it will always be a trigger when I see a mother-daughter relationship that is good, and I'm like, oh man, that hurts a little bit because I don't have that. But I think I came to like the understanding that she doesn't have it to give, and that's okay. She's still dealing with her trauma, right? And her way of dealing with her trauma is to numb herself out of the world, and therefore she can never show up. The same thing when I see a father step up to do. I feel that way too, but it's just, I think it's always going to be a trigger, but not nothing that makes me collapse. It's not nothing that makes me fall apart or anything like that. It's just like, oh, that hurts a little bit. you know. So that's my answer on that. I think the only thing I feel any type of pain about is, you know, my son not having a father and pretty much passing that trauma on because I wasn't conscious enough to say what does a family look like, and striving to build that outside of striving to build my career and just having to get pregnant and just having to do that. I wasn't conscious about that.
I That's a really good question, friend. I think for me, like my relationship with my mom is a lot better than it was. Like it exists now, right? But I think like because I didn't have anyone, like I never longed for it. Like I never like saw a mom and her kids like, oh, I wish I had that, or a mom and or their daughter and a father like, wish I had that. I think like I just overall like, dang, I just wish I had a family. Like I didn't care how it showed up. Like, dang, they got cousins, like y'all friends, you know who they are. Like that type of stuff is for me because it's just like I just never had anything, and I think that's why I go so hard for my kids with their fathers. Like even though like regardless of the situation, regardless of what, like I always push for like they gonna know their fathers, they're gonna know their side of their family. Like it brings me joy. Like they can go. That's my other grandma. You know, they interacting with cuz like that's. I think I've been so focused on building their relationship with their other sides that I never really thought about myself because I was like, as long as they have it, then I'm okay. And I'm like, I think more recently, like talk to my therapist, like I'm kind of peeling back the layers of what it looks like for me to have family, but it's just like I'm gonna be honest, like does it matter at my age? Like I go back and forth with myself, like especially when it comes to, like my dad's side of the family. Like, does it matter if I know if he's really my dad now that he's not there? Like, does it matter if my grandma? When I think about my kids, right? But then I go back and forth like that. Well, they have another grandma on their dad's side, so it's just like I'm getting questions now. I think, especially from Dream Asia, like you have a whole other side that doesn't exist. I was like, I know. Go call your other grandma. Like, but I was like, but it makes me think too, like, does that impact me? And I never really thought about that. Like, I honestly don't know. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I think I answered that. I guess what you said kind of triggered another thought though, because yeah, you know, I knew my grandfather, I knew my grandmother, cousins, and all of that, and I think that it's just that I didn't have what I needed from my parents, and I think that you know that's where my pain comes from. But it's not. It's something that I'm addressing, and it's something that I'm dealing with. But I don't. I think I'm at peace with it.
I will say, go ahead, friend.
Just real quick, because I'm gonna lose the thought. Y'all know how I am, but I will say. So my dad had another child. Oh, she just turned 18, so I don't know how old I was. But the trigger for me there is when I see that he does, like when I see he does things for her that we didn't get, right? So that's always, and I talked to him about that. We're still processing that, but seeing him, you know, show up for her dance recitals, or seeing him buy her car when she, you know, hit 16. So those things are a trigger for me. But I have to realize, like, it just that he wasn't in that season, obviously, right? He's much older now. He's whatever, but that's always been a trigger for me. And I was blessed to have a stepmom too that also taught me how to parent as an adult. And she really is like the key to me and my dad's relationship. Like she was like there. She, you know, when we got into arguments, she was the one, like the mediator. Rest her, you know, she's passed away in 2014. So that was like one of my best friends, but she also like helped me navigate parenthood. So I just wanted to touch on that. Like I still am triggered by things I didn't receive from, you know, my dad and my mom.
Yeah, and I will say, like, even when we were talking about, like, you know, the shelter, food, clothing, right, like basic necessities. I think even with that, when I think about my relationship with my older son, because me and John also went to therapy around the same age, like the 12, 13 age when he moved to Texas. And I think the biggest thing that came out of those conversations was I was still trying to do two things in my life. One, I was trying to prove that I was more than a teen mom, even though I was not a teen mom anymore. So I still wanted to go through all my milestones like I was supposed to. I wanted to go to college, wanted to graduate, wanted to get a career. I was doing all these things, wanting to make sure that they were provided for. Because I never thought about the marriage thing. I always thought about, like, well, as long as I have a house, that's ours. As long as I have this, that's ours. That I missed, like, a key point. Like, he just wanted time. Yeah. Like, that was a big thing with baby Jonathan that came out of therapy at the time. Like, I just want your time. Like, yeah, it's cool that every game that comes out, I get it. I get all the Jordans. I get up. We go places. But, like, you're not here. You know, you're at my football practice, but you got a computer in your lap. You're at my games, but like you're actually coordinating like transportation because you got to work another job and you don't need it. So he showed me like, and that's why I think with Dream and EJ, like with their activity, I'm like so involved. Like I'm dance mom, karate mom, because like I realized like yes, stuff is nice, but they just want time. Like sometimes like you can just give your kids the basic necessities. If they have you, they good. Like they don't need all that other stuff. That other stuff can't substitute what they want from you as a parent. And I think that was like the biggest lesson I learned from John, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. Because I'm extreme with everything I do. So Eli, he'll take a dinner and a movie, and I'll be like, let's go to Japan. You don't want to go? Like,
exactly.
I already know. So every time I plan something for him, my friends, my family has to be like, what does Eli want? So I don't know if I'm fulfilling something I didn't get, or if I'm just trying to overcompensate, which I know in some areas I do. But yeah, no, I definitely can relate to that. That hit home with me.
Yeah. I mean, it's not easy, right? Like they didn't have a blueprint. We're trying to figure out what a blueprint looks like. I think the difference though with us versus, our parents that were willing to learn. I think even in the midst of like what mental health things we may what's going on, in the back of our mind, we still know like we got kids to take care of, right? Like we got to show up for them. Like we can't get so boggled down in what's going on that we forget them. And I think like we all talked about like we're in therapy, we've been in therapy because like we catch that, right? Like we catch it before it goes too far. And for people who goes too far, like just I think sometimes as parents it's hard to like separate the two. Like where do I start and when do my child begin, right? When do I have that space to like to breathe, to break down? Like if I break down, what does this mean for my child? Like, and I think that's why it's like, is there an in between like, okay, I can do this or I can't? Like, what's the middle ground? I think we're all trying to still figure that out, but we don't stop trying to figure it out. And I think that's the great thing about like where we are in our parenting journey.
Yes, I have to agree because when I tell you, parenting has been the thing that tested me the most because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna knock this out the park. I knew what it was like to not have. I'm gonna give it to him. Yeah. And like you said, when sophomore in college, I never stopped. I had him, and I took it incomplete in the class, and I was like, you know what? 3 weeks old, I'm holding him, finishing up that class. I never stopped trying to achieve my goals, and I remember trying to take the CPA exam, and I'm not gonna. Somebody said to me, you're so focused on a CPA, you should be focused on being a mother. And that hit me because I was like, but I'm doing everything myself. And he would never know what it's like to not have, And I'm going to say this, it came from his father who wasn't like stepping up. So I felt resentment towards him because I said, but you could step up to help me so I could achieve both. But I didn't have that. I had to figure it out. And even how my mom shows up as a grandma, I had to even check her on that too. Because it's like, I just feel like he doesn't even get her, Whereas, my other nieces and nephews, they got to experience her in a different way because they had a need that she was able to fulfill. And my mom was like, well, you got it. You got food, you got a house, you got it. They don't need it. So he doesn't get her time either, I don't know. I'm super blessed where we at right now because like you said, I never gave up. I cried a lot. Yeah. I was that my relationship and my son's success breaks me down when it doesn't work out because I want so much better for him. Like, he'll be 18 soon. Well, he's 16, but he'll be graduating high school next year. Next year. And so it's like, that gives me so much anxiety. I have to let him go.
Listen, I don't even want to think about.
Because I feel like I can get another degree. You want to go to school together? No, I'm not. I'm gonna let him go. I'm gonna let him go because he has to. Yeah. Right. He has to grow up, but it's just like even that thought when I think about, oh man, he's that's my. It was just him and I for so long, and you
can always have another one.
Anyway.
this one. Anywho, the stigma of being a single mom. I think I'm gonna say this, and this can be my opinion. Sometimes it's just better to be a single mom to be in a relationship that's like so toxic.
I agree.
Because I always say like when I say I don't count baby Jonathan, I don't count that because I was so young. But like if I could, I know, if I could like with my daughter, with the relationship I have with my daughter's father, like I could have saved so much just pain of how I was able to show up for my kids if I would just said I'll just be a single mom. But and I think also the church played a part in this because like I was so big into church, like I was so like just involved, and it's so crazy because like when I had John, I'm 16, like I can still do things in church and everything, but at 21 when I had Dream, being stripped of responsibilities because I was a single mom was like really really wild. And I think the one thing that always bothered me about that situation was like at the time the pastor's wife was a teen mom and all that stuff, but she never shared her story. But like it's like the stigma of it, like it's like the one place I feel like I have sanctuary. You're taking everything away from me, like my spiritual guidance, because I'm pregnant. So my thought at that time was like, well, let me go marry the daddy, even though there's like a whole bunch of other little ones floating around. Let me marry him. Let me do this. So like I just feel like if I would have had guidance, or even like if I would have had parents to kind of say like, no. Right, exactly. And that's why I think family plays a huge role. Is like not to even just like how they guide us when we were a kid, but like in adult decisions. Like if you have someone sit you down, it's like, no, like yeah, you did this, but we got you, or you don't know. This is why you don't need to do this. Like I literally think it wasn't until I was going through like a really, really bad like abusive situation with her dad that my grandma finally sat me down and just like, you don't need this, baby. Like, and I just wish, like, when you have that consistent, though, conversation, that's why I think I'm so big with conversations for my kids, because, like, I want to nip this in the butt now. Like, I can't say who you're going to be with. I can't say, but I just want you to know, like, plant that seed, like, this is not okay. Or I don't need to be treated like this. Or I'm loved enough to, like, know better. And that's why, like, I do cherish the relationship my daughter has with her father, because she knows at the end of the day she's the apple of his eye. She knows how she should be treated. So, like, Dios knuckleheads are going to come and go. But I feel like there's enough sense to say, I don't got to put up with this long. Or that, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, but when you have none of that, that's how things go for so long. And it's just like, sometimes it's just better to just figure it out on your own versus just being in such bad situations. So I just thought about that because you were talking about the single. Because I had the same thing, like being a stigma with that. But it's just like, if I could turn back the hand of time, like, give me my badge. I'm here.
No, for real. And even like now, so I get, and this isn't to be boastful, but like a lot of people do tell me like, I'm a good mother. You're doing so well with Eli, and I'm like, because it's always that, I can do this more, or because even when like I get upset at him, I beat myself up so bad, like, I should have just been a little more patient, or I should have talked to him differently. Even in the mornings, I'm very intentional. When I drop him off for school, we always pray. And then even if I'm mad he didn't do the dishes the night before, and in my head I'm like, I can't wait to, but then I'm like, I'm not going to do it in the morning because that's going to set the tone for his day. Yes. So I'm very intentional with that, and I'm always like, man, I just wish I could have done this, and this more, or, would things have turned out differently? Now he's 15, so he's getting into these little girls and whatever. So I'm always like, I wonder how he would be like in a relationship. Like, did he learn enough from my parenting and his uncles and that, and my mom helping raise him or whatever, to where he is going to be like that stand-up guy? Would he be somebody that I would date? Because I'm hoping I'm instilling that in him. But I think I'm still working on imposter syndrome, as with being a parent, and just accepting like, you did do a good job.
I feel that because I think I feel that way as well. Like when people say, "Oh, you're a good mom," I'm like, "Am I?" Because I'm just really working and I'm not seeing it. Like and I hope it's not just because I take them on trips and stuff like that, but it's the other things that filling the gap with, giving them space to talk, giving them all that. And I think about Anna, right? Regardless of what her dad and I go through, he's there for her, and she's super blessed because his family is very close, and she has that. And that's one of the things I truly appreciate, is that she has that well-roundedness. She's grounded, and you can just see the difference. Like when I said, okay, I'm struggling with my son, whereas I know they're two different people, but if she would struggle, it's two people that's coming together.
Just for the people, that's her daughter. Because you said her name, and I'm like, at first I lost you. Like, who's that? And then,
Yeah, that's my baby. Parenting totally different. Being very grounded, especially just basically learning from the mistakes I did with my son. But also, you know what? The thing with my son too is apologizing to him.
Yes.
I had to apologize to him. I had to tell, you know what? I did that kind of, even when sometimes I kind of go overboard. I was like, oh, did I take it too far?
Yeah. Oh man, the amount of vulnerability you have to have as a parent.
And he probably be like, yeah or no. I understand where you're coming from. Like we still, he's a teenage boy. We bump heads, but we come back and talk.
Yeah.
No, that apologizing speaks volumes. Because I remember, man, when I moved back to Michigan and when Jonathan was like 18, 19, like we had like a whole situation. Like he just shared everything he felt about like, because EJ, my baby was here, I was married, and he just felt so many different emotions. And he just told me like everything that I did wrong, like everything he wished was done better. And like it hurt. Like I was like, I cried like boo-hoo, like tears. Cause that hurted to hear that. But at the end of the day, when me and him sat down and talked, like we grew up together. Like I don't care what any teenage parents say, like regardless of what, like you were learning how to grow up too. Like I mean, I'm still reading Babysitter Club book and I got a kid with me. Like that doesn't like I don't have the skills. So, like we grew up together. So like he felt the most of like the bumps of where I am now. Like yes, like his siblings reaped the benefits, but he had to go through it. So like I can get all those feels. And I sat down, we talked, and like we had a long conversation, and we were like really good now. He said like I wish my dad would do the same. Like because those conversations, those apologies, they seek that. Like they want that. And I think sometimes like I think that's what I'm missing. Like I would want that from my parents. Like I'm never gonna get it. Like I talked to my mom about how I feel, and that's what the grace thing. Like I just give at this point I just give it grace because it's always gonna be like, but I didn't have, or I went through this, or this happened to me, and it's just like
so enjoy. No,
right? No, pretty much. So like, what you crying about? But that's how they were raised, right?
Yeah.
No one talked, and it's like I sat down and like everything like that. I didn't go back to him like, well, I didn't have this, or you wasn't abused. I didn't do all that. Just like I just said, you know what? I'm sorry. Like I did the best I could with what I have. What can I do now to make it better? That's sometimes I think that's what I want. If we go back to that conversation, I think that's what I want. Like I just want like a genuine just like apology of just like I'm sorry. Period. That's the sentence. That's the whole sentence. I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't need the explanation of what happened to you and all that other stuff. Just I'm sorry, and this is where we are now. And I think if a lot of parents do that, like it just takes off so much. That's healing, girl. That's healing.
Because as soon as you say I'm sorry, but like that dismisses the I'm sorry,
and that's exactly what happened. I never ever talked to my father about how I felt, but I did talk to my mom, and it was the same thing of like, well, you never know what it's like to do this. You never know what it's like to, and I'm like, but you didn't know what it was like, what I went through when I was growing up, And this one thing I do want to point out, although I said, okay, my mom wasn't there, my father wasn't there, I did have someone step up. That was so amazing. I say this to this day, I wouldn't be where I'm at if he didn't step up. And there's no family, right? He wasn't family. He was just a man that gave me a house to live in. Didn't have nowhere to go in high school, and I was like, hey, can I live here? He said yes. And so many things that go ahead.
I just have a question. Just the way it sounds. So he was like he was a teacher. He was
he was my mom's friend.
Okay. Clarification. I'm like, so a man gave you a house? Okay.
No, he didn't give you no house.
Okay.
No, he was my mom's friend, and we lived with him. And then at like 15, I would say 14, I ended up homeless again. So I was just like, hey, do you mind if I live here? Right. Yeah. And it was an older white man.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And he said no at first. And again, my book memoir of a burdened child will be out this year. And all the stories, you'll get it. Okay.
I was gonna say Borders, but I think Borders is gone. Barnes and Noble, Amazon.
No, we'll link it when it's ready.
Oh, okay.
Amazon though. Yeah. So he opened up his home, and through that, I learned about connection. Like I know I could tell you everything about his life, but I can't tell you too much about my dad's life. you know, because he sat with me. We talked. He poured into me. I remember I got like my first job. He told me about saving. He had a business. He had me in his business with him, you know. So it's so
Wow.
many things that I learned from that standpoint that I probably didn't even appreciate at that point because it was like, I finally got a house. This thing been where I ain't got to worry about nothing. You know, he's gonna be good. And it was some things that happened, like, you know, he ended up even taking my sister and my younger sister, where, you know, he just stepped up in so many ways.
Yeah.
And you would think that someone would be like, I don't know, let me go ahead and take her back in. You know, no one said. Everyone's like, okay, cool, he got it. You know.
Yeah, pass the buck.
Yeah, no one's even said, you know what, I appreciate you, that I appreciate you doing this, because he didn't have to. He never got a dollar from it. It was nothing within the state. It was just me trying to navigate life and coming to him and say, hey, I'm in need.
Ooh, and then to be that age and have to say that to like ask for that. Oh,
Yeah. You'll get the details in more memoir of a burdened child.
No, it's. And I know we said I know we're gonna talk about that in the future. Like people who were there for us that may not have been family. Like even when I think about the father figures, like we have programs in school, and I had someone kind of help and guide me, who I called father to this day, because like those outside relationships are so impactful on us, especially if you don't have family or parents growing up. Is like, again, you're yearning for something, and to have, I always saw like these angels walking the earth, who's willing to like to take you in, to support you and not harm you. And I know for anybody see it all the time, it's rare, right? Like family harms, like just for a stranger's perspective. But angels do walk the earth, and I really really appreciate it, because like that shaped who I am. So like I totally, yeah, I get that. I get that. Fred was an amazing guy. He was. He was.
is he still around or?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, bringing it back full circle to wrap up episode 3. Gems. You guys want to pull some gems that we talked about today?
Yes. Just never give up. You know, parenting, I think parenting is just one of those things, right? You always question, am I doing it right? Yeah. Are they going to be okay? I think I tell you that all the time. Like, I worry about them. And you like, he going to figure it out. He got it. And I'm like, are you sure? So it's that. It's that. It's really just having grace with yourself. Always being there, giving them space to figure them out. And also, if you haven't dealt with your trauma, be conscientious of it, that you're not passing it on, because we do that unintentionally too. And so it's heal yourself and see your children for what they are and what they're going through. You got to meet them at their level, not the level that you think they're at.
Yeah, I love that. I guess my full circle is the biggest lesson I've learned from my son is, listen, he told me one time, he was like, you're not listening to me, because I'm just trying to think of like, your punishment for not doing A, B, and C. And so he kind of brought me back to reality, like, oh, damn, I wasn't, because I was just worried about, how to correct this behavior. And so he really was saying like, damn, I'm feeling like less motivated to do these chores. It's not because I don't want to do them. There's a reason behind it. Like, I'm going through something. Like, oh, what you got to go through? You're 15 years old. I pay bills. I work 50 jobs and, dealing with life. So that's probably for me, like you said, like just be willing to grow. Be willing to grow. Be willing to listen to your children, learn from your children, because you don't know it all. You know what I'm saying? You're going to learn every day.
Yeah.
So.
And I think the one thing, the gem I want to share, but I want to say this first, like, you both are really good parents. And I say that from a perspective of, you all have good humans. You have to think about that. Like, you all have kids who show up in this world with good hearts to other people. I think that's the biggest indicator, is if I'm a good parent, right? It's not about grades. It's not about that. Like, how are they treating others? And, like, I've talked to both of y'all, like, just how y'all kids show up with others, like, how they're able to be compassionate, empathetic. I think that's, like, the biggest indicator of if you're a good parent. So, like, y'all kids got it down packed. So, like, I just want to say that. But I also want to say, like, apologizing. That's the biggest thing I want to, like, set home, is just, like, give your kids the space to speak, like you just said, Fran, but also be able to set your pride and ego aside to listen and say, I'm sorry. Yeah. That's it. Like, just leave it at that and let them have that space to talk, because the more you give them that space, the more they're going to open up, the more as they get older. Like I said, my son about to be 21, and like he talks to me about everything. And I think it's because he knows he has that space to do that judgment-free zone. Like, you don't have to always agree with the decision, because they're going to make more and more decisions as they get older. Like, I don't I'm so proud of my son. So proud. I don't agree with all the decisions that he make, but he's still on the right track, and that's because he's open and willing to talk to me. And the fact if I know he's on the right track or not right track means he talks to me. Like
Yeah.
you want to just continue to have that relationship where they're talking to you. So just like being willing to like apologize, being willing to listen, and just time. Like the one thing that I talked to my therapist about. Like I literally cried. Like I'm enjoying being a parent for the first time ever. I'm enjoying being a parent because like I'm giving them the time. I'm not just placing them in front of like a TV or YouTube, which parents I do not recommend YouTube for so many reasons. We'll talk about tech in another episode. But I'm sitting and we're reading, we're doing puzzles, like we're watching like movies, like I'm hearing like EJ's like random conversations about the drama of first grade. But it's awesome because I've not always been in that mental space to do that. Either I'm wrapped up in like work or I'm wrapped up in like, oh, this relationship's not going well. That's why I said like I actually, I really love single moms who put their kids first. Put their kids first over a man because like those moments you can't get back with your kids and they remember that stuff. It's like the fact that I'm so present with Dream and EJ and even John when he needs me. This is a next level feeling of parenting that I'm like really really enjoying right now. So I'm just those are my gems. Like apologize and appreciate the time that you have with your kids. Like they really 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 appreciate it. So
I love that. Okay.
yes,
So
awesome.
that's it for episode 3. I just want to point out that Neek.
I mean, I mean,
It's okay. Next episode. Next episode.
awesome. Thank you.
That's right.